Taking a live look now from Washington, where the first full week of Congress is underway.
Monday, leaders, including Vice President Kamala Harris, worked to certify the results of the 2024 election.
Joining us now to talk more about that and much more on Capitol Hill is political reporter from the Hill, Julia Manchester. Julia, good morning.
Hey, good morning, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. Okay, a busy week, and obviously things kicked off yesterday with a January 6th that looked a lot different than the last January 6th we had 4 years ago. Kind of two sides here. What was the feeling there on Capitol Hill when that happened? Because some people saying we can't forget what happened 4 years ago, and meanwhile others are saying we want to move past that.
Yeah, it was a completely different feeling. Obviously a very snowy day in Washington yesterday, so that kind of added to the mix. But look, obviously much more peaceful, much more orderly, really, with the exception of that event, the certification of the election process. It was very uneventful. And you heard, Vice President Kamala Harris very much in the lead up to this event talking about the importance of democracy and maintaining that democracy. Remember, this is a vice president who certified the election results from an election that she lost, something that's only been done a handful of times throughout U.S. history. You had Vice President Mike Pence, who was in danger 4 years ago on January 6th. He was praising her on social media for doing her, job, essentially. So definitely a very different feel. You had President Biden overnight, January 5th, going into January 6th, writing in a Washington Post op-ed that we cannot rewrite history. So Republicans also praising this peaceful transfer of power. But I guess January 6th will continue, 2021, I should say, will continue to loom over Washington going forward. We know that there was that January 6th subcommittee select committee, that was formed to investigate the events of that day. Liz Cheney, a Republican, was heading it. And of course, Benny Thompson, a Democrat, was heading it. We have House Republicans now wanting to investigate the actions of that committee. There's a chance that President Trump will pardon a number of those people involved in the attacks on January 6th once he becomes president. So, the 2021 attacks still very much looming over Washington today.
Julia, as we go back to that image of Vice President Harris sitting next to, again, the newly reelected House Speaker Mike Johnson, even though you say it was uneventful, you're right, compared to 4 years ago, it was still very dramatic. I can only imagine what the emotions must have been like with the vice president certifying the election that she lost, like you said, and then you've got Speaker Johnson, who barely was reelected. Does that foreshadow any troubling on the House side with the Republicans as we start this new administration, that he barely made it into office? Does that foreshadow what could be ahead?
Well, first of all, that image of Vice President Harris sitting next to Speaker Johnson, that is what is supposed to happen. That is how democracy is supposed to work. So the fact that we're, calling that dramatic and saying that is notable, it shows just how divided, we are as a country right now, coming out of the, coming back from those 4 years ago on that very fateful day. But turning to Speaker Mike Johnson and House Republicans, he has a very slim majority right now. He barely skated through. President Trump very much, pulling the conference together, getting those two members who voted against him for that, but to vote for him in the first speaker round, I should say, a speakership vote round. So, there's certainly going to be cracks in the GOP coalition going forward in the House. You have, a lot of these members who were skeptical of Johnson, really not liking that he's made deals with Democrats in the past. They want him to really cut down on spending. These are fiscal hawks, for example. But if they go against Mike Johnson, in many ways, they risk going against President Trump, because we know President Trump and Mike Johnson are very much aligned on getting that agenda through. But I wouldn't say it's not just the House. It's also Senate Republicans as well. We're seeing some potential cracks form. You have, for example, Speaker Mike Johnson and House Republicans wanting to pass one big reconciliation package that would include immigration reform, extension of those Trump tax cuts or, tax reform, as well as energy policy. But Senate Republicans want a two-part approach. And we're seeing Trump sort of walk that very narrow line, originally endorsing the one-part approach, but now seemingly open to the idea of passing this in two parts. So some disagreements between both sides of Capitol Hill on the Republican side.
Julia, speaking of the spending package, obviously we know Elon Musk played played a kind of a big role on social media, getting his hands into that. What's the feelings around Elon heading into this new administration, and also kind of his feelings in terms of causing shockwaves in the UK, also causing shockwaves in Canada? What's the feelings around the new Trump, Elon, that whole entire era coming in about a week and a half?
I think there's this question of, will Elon Musk overstay his welcome? There are numerous examples of President-elect Trump being close to someone, being close to an advisor, for example, and then falling out with them. And we know that Elon Musk, and how vocal he's been on his platform X, and the news he's been making by getting involved in UK politics, for example, it could threaten to overshadow President-elect Trump in many ways. And we saw during that, spending battle a few weeks ago, it was Elon Musk who was in many ways being very vocal online. So there is, I think, a big looming question as to whether he will overstay his welcome. And I think there are some people in President-elect Trump's orbit who certainly have their eyebrows raised when it comes to Elon Musk. I think there's a question of how much will he be involved in the White House. He's certainly been hanging around Mar-a-Lago quite a bit, being right by the president-elect side during the holiday season. It's like he's, one of the Trump family, if you will. So a lot of questions as to what his role looks like going forward.
A busy Washington in less than 2 weeks for the inauguration set for the 20th. Julia, Manchester with the Hill, thank you so much for your time this morning and your insight and perspective. Appreciate it.
Thank you.